Hello, everybody. Welcome to ELA with Robo Mrs. Skelly. Today, what you're going to do is you're going to listen to a story called The Ghost of Pegleg Peter. Then you're going to answer some questions based on the story. You can go back at any time on the recording to help you answer the questions with specific information. Make sure that you answer your questions in complete sentences. I'm going to say it again, complete sentences. That means you're going to need capitals at the beginning, capitals on your proper nouns, and the ending punctuation. I know you can do it. Complete sentences. So, here we go. The Ghost of Pegleg Peter. There he is. And here we go. Peter Stuyvesant was governor of New Amsterdam when Manhattan Island belonged to the Dutch. The governor was often called Old Silvernails because he had a wooden leg that had a silver band around it. He was proud of his wooden leg in the town that he ruled with a fearless hand. It was a bitter day for him when he had to surrender New Amsterdam to the English fleet, but he still loved the city that he had governed, which the English now call New York. So he decided to live there for the rest of his life, even though he hated the English more and more. He lived peacefully and quietly on his farm, seeing just a few of his old Dutch friends. When he died, his body was buried in a vault in a chapel that he had built. That chapel and vault are still in New York City along the side of the Church of St. Mark's in the Bowery. His body had been put into a closed vault, but that did not stop the ghost of the governor from stomping around on black or moonlit nights in his old haunts, his farm and the city hall where he had once reigned. Folks heard his stomping peg leg with the silver band and saw him, and when they saw the ghost, they would run away in fear. That pleased him, especially if they were English, as he hated the English. He wanted no one around his grave, least of all his enemy who had robbed him and the Dutch government. What angered the governor's ghost most of all was the sight of the city that was creeping farther and farther north and being built more and more around his grave. He did not want his enemies near them, and he set out to stop them. But the English settlers paid the ghost no heed. They were now tampering with the graveyards around the church. Streets were spreading in all directions. Wooden houses were sprouting up everywhere. Old Silvernails was furious. This building of the city had to stop. Now the tappings and bangings of the wooden leg were heard more often. The ghost was seen with a heavy stick in his hand. His hollow, haggard face looked wild and forbidding and black with anger at the killing of trees and the tearing up of earth. Workmen would catch a glimpse of the ghost and flee in terror. But that did not stop the work. If some men heard and would not return to their tasks, others would take their place. So the work went on and on for a long time, the streets and houses growing up all around. They were coming nearer and nearer to the governor's grave. Then one day, workmen were cutting a road through the churchyard of Governor Stuyvesant's chapel. This was the moment when the ravaging must be stopped. The ghostly governor decided to speak his anger so loud and so fierce that the whole city would hear him and stop. So one night, the ghost came thumping out from his vault under the trees and going along through the low bushes along the cobblestone path that led to the church door. As it happened that night, the reverend had come to the church to fetch some papers. Stomp, stomp, stomp. The ghost came along the cobblestones. From the other direction came the preacher. The moon was only half full, but bright enough to show church, trees, and ghost. When the ghost saw the reverend, he raised his stick threateningly. The reverend raised his eyes, took one look, and ran off screaming, "Help! Help! Help!" The governor ghost looked after the fleeing fellow with disgust and stomped to the locked church door. He walked through it into the church and stomped up to the hanging bell rope. Taking it in his hands, he began to pull on the rope savagely, ringing the bell. And with every pull, there was a wild clanging that could be heard near and far. Folks heard the reverend's cries and the clamoring bell, and they rushed out of their homes in their night clothes, frightened and shouting, and they ran to the church. The door was locked, but the bell-ringing screamed through the air wilder than ever. At last, someone unlocked the door. The church was pitch black, and the bell was ringing crazily, its echo everywhere. Lanterns were lit, and not a soul was in sight, but the ringing was going on as if goblins and ghosts were clanging the bell. Everyone stood petrified, unable to move. And then suddenly the ringing stopped. They all rushed to the rope. But there was only half a rope. It was torn high up in the middle, its lower part gone. The people were so frightened they couldn't speak. As they left the church, nobody said a word. The next morning, the Reverend found the other half of the torn rope. It was in Governor Stuyvesant's vault. Now everybody knew who had rung that bell. But the tearing up of woods and fields for roads and the building of new houses went on just the same. Then Peter Stuyvesant's ghost knew he was beaten, just as he knew he was beaten when the great British fleet came sailing into the harbor to take the city. Sometimes they say the ghost of the governor still comes out again and looks around sadly. But he never rings the bell anymore, for he knows it will be of no use. The Ghost of Peg-Leg Peter. The end. Now what you're going to do is you're going to take out your questions and you're going to answer your questions based on the story. If you need to listen to the story again, just hit the rewind button and replay the reading of the story. Good luck. Remember complete sentences, and I know you'll do well.